when you become a mum, you see the years ahead as nurturing, seeing your little ones through those important school years, helping them on their merry way through life. But you probably don't think of spending 10 years fighting to prevent your son being extradited to America for hacking into the Pentagon computer, do you, Janis?
No, you absolutely don't. And just shortly beforehand, we had been saying how fortunate it was that Gary had never got into trouble with the law, had never got into heavy drugs. And we were saying, congratulating ourselves, and this happened just weeks later.
Gary McKinnon suffers from Asperger's, and Janis's battle to stop his persecution and extradition to the US finally came to an end last year when the UK confirmed it wouldn't press charges here. So Janis has written about her experiences, and tell me a bit about the background of your story. Did Gary actually hack into the Pentagon computer?
Well, Gary accessed the computers, but he said there was no passwords and firewalls. He also left silly cyber notes saying their security was awful, and also political notes, which he obviously shouldn't have done. But at the time, the sentence here was 6 months for a Section 1 or Section 2 computer offence. So for it suddenly to escalate and become 60 years was so disproportionate and terrifying.
So, I mean, you obviously knew your son, I guess. How old was he when he hacked?
30s.
Okay, so you obviously knew before this that your son must be a bit of a genius.
He's not a genius, you know. I mean...
I wouldn't know how to hack into the Pentagon computer.
Yeah, but the thing is, Gary has Asperger's, so he has a lateral way of thinking, and he could see something that to him was quite an open door and quite simple, whereas somebody else could be looking for a much more complicated way of something. It's a way of seeing. But Gary, even ex-bosses, said that he was never remarkable in computers, and they had no passwords. Did
he, Janis, one day come downstairs and said, "Mum, I've just hacked into the Pentagon computer"?
No, I would have thrown it out, you know what I mean? No. Absolutely. What happened was he phoned and he said, "I've been arrested by the high-tech crime unit." He said, "Don't worry, Mum, it's fine. They're all computer guys just like me." I said, "I'll get you a lawyer." He says, "Oh, it's okay. You don't need a lawyer. They're really nice, and I've just told them everything." So I was terrified. And I knew when it was the Pentagon, it just wasn't going to be that simple.
So the British legal system could have prosecuted him.
Well, the CPS said in December 2012 that they felt they didn't have the evidence for a conviction. So there you go.
Okay. So when did you first hear about Gary's arrest and the American involvement?
Gary telephoned me when he was initially arrested in March 2002. And from the police station, and that was pretty terrifying because, as I say, when he said the Pentagon, I just knew it wasn't going to be that simple. But then they suddenly didn't want to keep him on bail, and then in October, the Americans announced that they wanted to extradite 2002. But that was absolutely petrifying. Extradition, the whole thing of that was petrifying. But then they waited, nothing happened, so we thought, it's gone away, they're not going to do anything. And then in mid-2005, they arrested him because by this time we were using a new treaty that was written in 2003, which meant you could extradite with no evidence whatsoever. So that was when the real terror set in.
Okay, what were you doing that day when you got the call saying, "We're going to extradite your son"?
Well, we foster children, and one of the girls came in and says, "There's a phone call for you," and I was in the kitchen, and I took the phone, and I just couldn't. I was shaking. Every part of me was shaking. I was so so-scared. It was the most terrifying feeling ever, and from that second, life just was never the same.
So they thought Gary was a spy?
Yeah, I mean, a spy on UFOs, you know, I mean...
So that's what he wanted to know, wasn't it? He wanted to know if there was evidence on UFOs.
That's right. He felt there was reverse engineering technology that was being used that had been taken from UFOs. He also felt aliens had infiltrated American systems, and he was wanting to alert them to that. But also Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, he actually has come forward and says he's worked with aliens. So, I mean,
really?
He's not the only one. Yeah. Yeah, publicly. So Gary's not the only one. Also, there are generals in a thing called the Disclosure Project, American generals. They have said the same thing. And it was Gary seeing the Disclosure Project that made him so fascinated, because here was these very credible people saying that they'd worked with aliens. So he's not alone.
No, and we aren't, seemingly, either. So listen, you have this 30-something man, this son of yours, right?
Yes. Going on 16.
Okay,
yeah.
He's got Asperger's. Fine. What is it like? I don't know how you can describe it. To suddenly find that America want to tear him limb from limb and put him in prison for 60 years.
It's like living in a born identity scenario. It is very strange, and you wake up and you cannot believe it's real, because what has he done for all of the American government to be? I mean, even Eric Holder, the American Attorney General, came out against Gary, and it just seems so frightening for this little person to have all these massive people coming out wanting to take him there and lock him up for the rest of his life. So it's terrifying.
Did you think at any point black vans were going to appear outside your house and men with suits were going to just come and steal him?
I absolutely did. You wouldn't believe how paranoid you get. When we were going to do an interview with Russian TV, I actually thought the Russians were kidnapping us. I mean, I really did. I thought because they wanted to know about Gary or whatever, and we went into this kind of back street where they park, and it was like these things you see in films. You become so paranoid, it is untrue.
So tell me about Gary's emotional state, because he at one point thought, okay, America are going to extradite me, and I mentioned the Asperger's, but I mean, does that mean that Gary is more sensitive and emotional than somebody without Asperger's? Because I know he wanted to take his own life.
Well, Gary never travels abroad. He never leaves the UK. He never leaves North London, to be honest, or round about there. And the fact of being away from everything he knows, he thought it was preferable to take his own life. When Ian Norris, another man, was extradited, Gary said, well, why didn't he and his wife just take an overdose? Because with Asperger's, it is pure logic, based in pure logic. And he thought logically this was the best thing. But he shut down. His teeth were clenched, his fists were clenched, his body was tight. He completely shut down. And it was the most frightening thing to see. And I knew that I had to get everybody I could on board to stop Gary from being extradited. And the amount of people, the faith it's given me in human nature, people we've never met travelling hundreds of miles to help us, people from Twitter I had never met, politicians, celebrities, Sting and Trudy Styler, David Gilmour, so many people came to help, and the media have been amazing, and together with people like David Cameron, Theresa May, Gordon Brown, so on, we did it. You
did. What was that moment like when America... I can't remember what happened. Did America back down, or did England say we won't extradite? I can't remember.
No, Theresa May just said, no, we're not. And everybody was shocked. And I think initially America said they wouldn't take her phone calls again and they wouldn't speak to her, and they were quite upset with it. And they're actually trying to extradite a British soldier just now. But the thing is, they wouldn't, for overcharging. He's been in Afghanistan, he's been everywhere. But we would never get extraditing an American soldier here for overcharging. It just would not happen. It would not happen.
Janis, Gary's mum, how does Gary feel about it all now? Do you think he's grateful for the lengths you went to?
I don't know. I think he's just grateful to be here. But it will take Gary time to see life as he saw it before. Hopefully it'll take him time, but he will get there. He will he be looking at computers he shouldn't again, or not? He's not interested. I think it's completely taking that interest away. He could have done a concert next month with very famous musicians, and he says, I can't do it, Mum, because he's not ready. But no, he won't. He regrets bitterly. He feels he's ruined everyone's life. He hasn't, but he feels he has. He's got no self-esteem at all. Thank you so much for coming on, Janis. Thank you. Fascinating, isn't it? The might of America, and it just brings to mind what I heard on the radio this morning about Russia saying they think that America is, the world's biggest bully. That there they were, ready to essentially rip apart this 30-something, computer guy just because he happened to get into a computer system and tell them that their defences weren't great.
Saving Gary McKinnon, A Mother's Story by Janis Sharp, and it's out now. 11:30.